Hello and welcome to your ultimate guide for the D080 OA, Managing in Global Business Environment course. My goal today is simple: give you everything you need to fully understand the key concepts, master them, and walk into your D080 OA exam with total confidence. In this video we'll cover defining globalization, 4 aspects, going global stages, drivers and benefits, globalization debate. And remember, our website offers free exam guides and practice questions to help you ace your D080 OA exam. You'll find the link in the description below, so be sure to check it out and get the resources you need to study smarter, not harder. So let's dive right in. So what exactly is globalization? At its core, globalization represents the increasing integration and interdependence of countries around the world. It's when international connections arise from the exchange of worldviews, products, ideas, and cultural elements. Think about your daily life for a moment. You might wake up to an alarm on a phone made in China, wear clothes manufactured in Bangladesh, and eat breakfast with coffee from Colombia. That's globalization in action. Now here's something fascinating. The word globalization is actually quite recent. It only gained its current meaning in the 1970s when academics, journalists, and publishers started using it to describe what they were seeing in the world economy. Before we dive deeper, I want to mention something that will be incredibly helpful for your preparation. I've created over 300 completely free practice questions that align perfectly with everything we're covering today. You'll find the link in the description below, and these questions will help you master these concepts. Let's talk about what drives globalization. There are 3 main forces pushing it forward. First, economics plays a huge role. Countries want to trade with each other because it makes economic sense. Second, improvements in transportation have made it easier and cheaper to move goods across borders. Third, international cooperation through organizations and agreements has reduced barriers to trade. These 3 forces work together to create the interconnected world we live in today. Here's a striking fact that really shows the scale of globalization. World trade has increased dramatically over the past few decades. Before 1980, trade represented just below 30% of the world's total economic output. After 2000, that number jumped to 65%. That's more than double. In the United States alone, trade now exceeds 1/3 of the entire economy. Why does this matter? Economists tell us that global trade allows each country to specialize in what it does best. When countries focus on products they can make most efficiently, using the least resources and lowest costs, it increases total global production. This specialization is one of the key arguments supporters use when they talk about the benefits of globalization. The International Monetary Fund, which we'll talk more about later, identified 4 fundamental aspects that define globalization. First is trade and transactions between countries. Second is the movement of capital and investment across borders. Third is the migration and movement of people. Fourth is the dissemination of knowledge and information. Each of these aspects connects our world in different ways. But globalization isn't just about economics. Academic literature commonly divides globalization into 3 major areas. We have economic globalization, which deals with trade and money flows. We have cultural globalization, which involves the spread of ideas, values, and cultural practices. And we have political globalization, which affects how governments interact and make decisions. Understanding all 3 areas is essential for your exam. Let me explain cultural globalization in more detail, because this is where things get interesting and sometimes controversial. Cultural globalization refers to how ideas, meanings, and values spread around the world in ways that extend and intensify social relations. The internet, popular media, and international travel have accelerated this process tremendously. People can now participate in social relationships that cross national and regional borders easily. Think about music, art, fashion, and technology. These cultural trends spread globally faster than ever before. Social media platforms have connected billions of people across continents. This creates shared norms and knowledge that people use to form their individual and collective cultural identities. It's fascinating how a teenager in Tokyo might share more cultural references with someone in New York than with their own grandparents. However, here's where the debate gets heated. While cultural globalization has increased cross-cultural contacts, it has also been accompanied by a decrease in the uniqueness of once isolated communities. Many critics argue that globalization creates cultural homogenization. What does that mean? It means making everything the same. More specifically, critics worry about the global dominance of American culture at the expense of other cultures being erased or marginalized. Now let me share a different perspective. The internet, while spreading English across the globe, also enables speakers of less prominent languages to connect and build shared content. Various anti-globalization movements have emerged because people are concerned about losing smaller cultures. These movements protest globalization and give momentum to defending local uniqueness, individuality, and identity. This tension between global integration and local preservation is something you need to understand. Let's move to political globalization because this affects how countries govern and interact. Political globalization may ultimately reduce the importance of individual nation-states. Think about that for a moment. Supranational institutions like the European Union, the World Trade Organization, and the International Criminal Court now serve to replace or extend national functions. These organizations facilitate international agreements that individual countries must follow. Increasingly, non-governmental organizations influence public policy across national boundaries. These groups, often called NGOs, work on humanitarian aid and developmental efforts. They operate independently of governments, but can shape international policy. As a response to globalization, some countries have embraced isolationist policies. North Korea is a prime example. The government makes it very difficult for foreigners to enter and strictly monitors their activities when they do. Economic globalization is probably what most people think of first when they hear the word globalization. It refers to the widespread international movement of goods, capital, services, technology, and information. It's the increasing economic integration and interdependence of national, regional, and local economies across the world. This happens through an intensification of cross-border movement of all these elements. Economic globalization has been expanding since the emergence of transnational trade, but it has grown at an increased rate in recent decades. Why? Several factors explain this acceleration. Improvements in long-distance transportation efficiency have made shipping cheaper. Advances in telecommunication keep people and businesses connected instantly. Information has become more important than physical capital in the modern economy. Developments in science and technology continue to break down barriers. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which later became the World Trade Organization, created a framework where countries gradually decreased trade barriers. This recent boom has been primarily supported by developed economies integrating with developing countries. They do this through foreign direct investment, lowering the costs of doing business, reducing trade barriers, and in many cases, increasing cross-border migration. These practice questions I mentioned earlier really help you understand how all these pieces fit together. Now let's examine the real-world impacts of globalization, because this is where theory meets reality. Globalization has resulted in widespread sharing of and access to information around the globe. Cultural trends are exchanged through music, art, clothing styles, and technology. People around the world are more connected than ever before through social media platforms. Mobile phones and cellular networks allow instant communication across nations and borders. Some research shows positive trends as the world has become more globalized, though we must be careful about claiming direct causation. In the developing world, life expectancy rose by 4 months each year after 1970. The infant mortality rate declined dramatically from 107 deaths per 1,000 people in 1970 to just 29 per 1,000 in 2017. Adult literacy in developing countries rose from 53% in 1970 to 86% in 2016. However, globalization has a darker side that we cannot ignore. Corporations can outsource manufacturing and service jobs from high-cost locations to lower-cost locations. They can pay workers lower salaries and provide fewer or no benefits. Critics argue these moves disadvantage workers in developed countries and exploit workers in impoverished nations. Proponents argue outsourcing provides much-needed jobs and income in lower-cost locations. This debate continues today. Income inequality has increased in many areas over the past 20 years. In the United States, the income of the top 50% has risen much faster than the income of the bottom 50%. The bottom half has seen only slight increases over 40 years. This growing wealth gap concerns many economists and policymakers. It raises questions about whether globalization benefits everyone equally or primarily helps those already wealthy. Let's talk about something that will definitely appear on your exam: the 5 stages of going global. Companies don't just wake up one day and become multinational corporations. They go through distinct stages, and understanding these stages is crucial for your success. Each stage represents a deeper commitment to international operations and brings both greater risks and potential rewards. Stage 1 is market entry. Companies enter new countries using business models similar to what they use at home. To gain access to local customers, companies often need to establish a production presence in that country. This stage is about testing the waters and learning about international operations. It's the safest stage because the commitment is relatively low. Stage 2 is product specialization. Companies transfer the full production process of a particular product to a single low-cost location. They then export those goods to various consumer markets. Different locations begin to specialize in different products or components. Companies trade in finished goods rather than producing everything everywhere. This allows them to take advantage of cost differences between countries. Stage 3 is value chain disaggregation. This represents the next step in globalizing the supply chain infrastructure. Companies disaggregate the production process and focus on completing each activity in the most advantageous location. Individual components of a single product might be manufactured in several different countries and then assembled into final products elsewhere. This creates complex global supply chains. Stage 4 is value chain re-engineering. Companies seek to further increase cost savings by re-engineering their processes to suit local market conditions. They substitute lower-cost labor for capital. This means using more workers instead of expensive machinery when labor is cheap. Companies adapt their production methods to take advantage of local conditions rather than imposing the same methods everywhere. Stage 5 is creation of new markets. The focus shifts to market expansion. Companies can substantially lower their prices in both old and new markets to expand demand. The value of new revenues generated in this stage is often greater than the value of cost savings achieved in earlier stages. This stage represents the most mature form of globalization, where companies truly operate as global entities. It's important to note that not all industries follow this exact sequence. Sometimes stages happen simultaneously or in different orders. For example, in consumer electronics, product specialization and value chain disaggregation occurred together. Different locations started specializing in different components at the same time. Understanding these variations will help you answer more complex exam questions. Now let's discuss the industry globalization drivers. These are 4 sets of conditions that determine whether an industry can become more global. First are market drivers. These provide opportunities for scale and convergence of customer needs. As customers in different parts of the world increasingly demand similar products and services, opportunities arise for economies of scale. Companies can market somewhat standardized offerings globally. Global customers have emerged as needs continue to converge across countries. Second are cost drivers. These offer economies of scale and scope and allow corporations to exploit differences in production costs. Economies of scale mean producing more to reduce the cost per unit. Economies of scope mean using the same resources to produce different products. Differences in costs for product development, manufacturing, and sourcing in different parts of the world become very important for global strategy. Third are competition drivers. These push companies into new markets and increase trade levels. Industry characteristics affect globalization potential. These include the degree to which total industry sales comprise export or import volume. They include the national diversity of competitors. They include the extent to which major players have globalized their operations. All of these factors influence whether an industry becomes more global. Fourth are government drivers. These provide favourable policies and support for an industry. The presence or absence of favourable trade policies matters greatly. Technical standards, policies, regulations, and government-operated or subsidised competitors or customers all affect global strategy. Governments can either accelerate or slow down industry globalisation through their policies. Understanding these four drivers helps you analyse any industry's globalisation potential. Let me tell you about the benefits of global expansion, because this is what motivates companies to go international. Those who favour globalisation theorise that a more extensive array of products, services, technologies, medicines and knowledge will become available. These developments have the potential to reach significantly larger customer bases. This global expansion means increased sales volume, higher growth rates in gross domestic product, and more empowerment of individuals and political systems through additional resources and capital. For multinational corporations, typical benefits include several attractive opportunities. First, unsaturated demand for new products exists in developing markets. Second, labour costs are lower in many countries. Third, natural resources and other inputs to products are less expensive. Fourth, operating costs are generally lower. These factors make global expansion financially attractive, despite the risks and challenges involved. Multinational corporations seek to benefit from globalization in multiple ways. They sell goods in multiple countries to reach larger markets. They source production in areas that can produce goods more profitably. Through horizontal expansion into new geographic markets, they look for economies of scale opportunities. They mass-produce goods in markets with substantially cheaper costs for labour or other inputs. They may also look for economies of scope by using similar processes across different products. However, global expansion comes with significant challenges that companies must navigate. The first and arguably most substantial challenge involves ethical business practices. This includes labour standards, product safety, environmental stewardship, corruption, and regulatory compliance. These ethical issues have historically played a dramatic role in the success or failure of global players. Companies that ignore ethical considerations often face boycotts, legal problems, and reputation damage. Organisational structure presents another significant hurdle. Companies must efficiently and effectively incorporate new regions into their value chain and corporate structure. International expansion requires enormous capital investments. It also requires developing specific strategic business units to manage operations and accounts in different countries. Getting the structure wrong can doom an expansion effort before it even begins. Public relations and branding are critical components of most businesses. Building public relations potential in a new geographic region is an enormous challenge. Companies cannot simply transplant their home country image to foreign markets. They must understand local preferences, cultural sensitivities, and communication styles. Brand building takes time and significant investment in each new market. Leadership challenges are substantial when going global. It can be difficult for businesses to find effective organisational leadership with appropriate knowledge and skills to approach a given geographic market successfully. Leaders need cross-cultural competence, language skills, and deep understanding of local business practices. Finding and retaining such talent is both difficult and expensive. Legal and regulatory structures vary tremendously across countries. Every nation has unique laws and regulations governing business. Multinational corporations need access to legal expertise that helps them understand in-country laws and comply with applicable regulations. Failure to comply can result in fines, legal action, or forced exit from markets. This legal complexity adds cost and risk to global operations. Infrastructure quality affects business operations dramatically. Infrastructure includes basic physical and organisational structures needed for a society to operate and for an economy to function. This includes roads, bridges, water supply, electrical grids, and telecommunications. Poor infrastructure makes it difficult for businesses to effectively operate. Companies might need to invest in infrastructure themselves or choose different markets. Technology levels in different nations affect attractiveness of doing business and types of operations possible. Challenges include training workers who lack technical skills, dealing with inadequate transportation systems, and working with poor communication facilities. Companies must adapt their operations to local technology levels or invest in upgrading local capabilities. Both options require resources and strategic planning. Before we continue, I want to remind you about those 300+ free practice questions I created. They cover exactly these types of challenges and opportunities. Working through real problems will help you understand how multinational corporations make decisions about global expansion. The link is right there in the description, and I really encourage you to use them alongside this video. Now let's shift gears and talk about the globalization debate. This is not really a debate in the traditional sense. It's more a stark difference of opinion on how internationalization of businesses affects countries' cultural, consumer, and national identities. The central question is whether these changes are desirable. The debate surrounds whether and how fast markets are merging together globally. Many people consider globalization a modern phenomenon, but according to influential thinkers like Thomas Friedman, this is actually its third stage. Globalization 1.0 started from 1492 to about 1800. It was driven by nationalism and religion. This stage was characterized by how much industrial power countries could produce and apply. European colonization and exploration defined this era. Globalization 2.0 lasted from about 1800 to 2000. It was largely shaped by the emerging power of huge multinational corporations. It grew with European mercantile stock companies as they expanded in search of new markets, cheap labour, and raw materials. This era saw the Industrial Revolution spread across the world. Rail networks, steamships, and telegraph lines connected distant places. Globalization 3.0 began around 2000 with advances in global electronic interconnectivity. These advances allowed individuals to communicate in entirely new ways. Significant software advances have allowed an unprecedented number of people worldwide to work together with unlimited potential. The internet, smartphones, and digital platforms define this current era. Understanding these three waves helps you see globalization as an evolving historical process. Let me share with you 10 significant events that helped reshape the modern world according to Friedman. First, the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, symbolically ending the Cold War division. Second, Netscape went public in 1995, making the internet commercially viable for businesses and consumers. Third, development of powerful, easy-to-use software improved global connectivity dramatically. Fourth, providing basic software online for free accelerated collaboration across borders. Fifth, the internet lets firms use employees worldwide through outsourcing arrangements. Sixth, moving operations offshore created new business models for sales outside the United States. Seventh, improved acquisition and distribution methods, like those used by Walmart, lowered costs globally. Eighth, insourcing became a new type of service collaboration. Companies like UPS began organizing delivery for other companies like Papa John's Pizza. Ninth, Google revolutionized how people search for and access information. 10th, technological advances in wireless communication and processing power connected more people than ever before. These 10 factors converged with new software, public familiarity with the internet, and billions of people from Asia and the former Soviet Union entering the market's economy. However, not everyone agrees the world has become flat and equal. International business professor Pankaj Ghemawat disagrees with this view. He characterizes the world as semi-globalized and multi-domestic. His research suggests using a framework called cage analysis to study barriers to cross-border economic activity. Understanding this alternative perspective is important for balanced analysis. The cage framework covers 4 factors that create distance between countries. First is cultural distance. Cultural differences between two countries reduce their economic exchange. This includes differences based on language, norms, identity, and trust. Countries that are culturally similar trade more with each other. Cultural distance remains a significant barrier, even in our connected world. Second is administrative distance. Administratively similar countries trade much more with each other. This refers to historical governmental ties, similar laws, and membership in the same trading bloc. Countries with colonial relationships often maintain strong trading ties. Common legal systems facilitate business transactions. Shared political systems reduce uncertainty and transaction costs. Third is geographic distance. As distance increases, trade decreases because distance usually increases transportation costs. Geographic differences also include time zones, access to ports, shared borders, and climate. Physical distance still matters despite technological advances. Shipping costs increase with distance. Time zone differences complicate real-time communication. Fourth is economic distance. This refers to differences in demographic and socioeconomic conditions. These include gross domestic product per capita, income levels, labour costs, and access to capital. Countries at similar economic development levels tend to trade more with each other. Economic distance affects what products countries can produce and consume. Understanding the Cage framework helps you analyse international business opportunities more realistically. Now let's explore the arguments on both sides of the globalization debate. Proponents of globalization state it has brought several important benefits. First, an increased pace of development in many countries. Second, increased awareness of an international community and global citizenship. Third, the potential to sell to broader markets and increase wealth. These proponents see globalization as the beneficial spread of liberty and capitalism across the world. Supporters argue that global economic growth resulting from free trade should create jobs everywhere. It should make companies more competitive through exposure to international competition. It should lower prices for consumers through increased competition and efficiency. Advocates also claim globalization is creating a less compartmentalized world power structure. They say increased access to information may increase tolerance and understanding between peoples and cultures. On the other side, critiques of globalization generally stem from discussions about impacts on the planet and individual nation-states. Critics of unrestricted free trade say it benefits the rich at the expense of the poor. They argue that competition has not driven prices down, but has allowed countries to gain price advantages by manipulating their currencies. Currency manipulation distorts trade and creates unfair advantages. Globalization has created a culture of fear among middle-class workers in developed countries. Employers threaten to export jobs if workers demand higher wages or better conditions. Developed countries utilize cheaper labor in developing countries, bringing money into less developed areas. However, middle-class manufacturing jobs in developed countries are removed as a result. This can decrease inequality between countries but increase inequality within countries. Critics point to evidence of social disintegration in communities affected by globalization. They cite the spread of diseases across borders more easily. Environmental damage from increased production and transportation concerns many critics. Breakdowns in democracy where economic power supersedes political power worry others. Increasing poverty in some nations, despite overall global growth, remains a problem. These are characterized as unintended consequences of globalization. Environmental challenges particularly concern critics of globalization. Climate change is linked to increased global production and consumption. Cross-boundary water and air pollution affect regions far from the source. Overfishing of international waters threatens marine ecosystems. All of these environmental issues have been connected to patterns of globalization and international trade. What we've covered today represents the essential foundation for understanding globalization. Let me pull all these pieces together for you. Globalization is characterized by increasing worldwide connections. These connections involve rapid and discontinuous change. They include an increasing number of diverse participants. They create growing complexity in international relationships. You need to see globalization as a complex, multifaceted phenomenon. Globalization has economic effects through trade and investment flows. It has political effects through changing power structures and governance. It has cultural effects through the spread of ideas and values. All three dimensions interact and influence each other. You cannot understand one dimension without considering the others. This integrated understanding is what your exam will test. The benefits of globalization include widespread sharing of ideas and information. Advocates feel this exposure makes people more tolerant and aware. The drawbacks include potential cultural homogenization and increased inequality. Opponents worry about losing local cultures to dominant global forces. Both perspectives contain valid points that you should understand. Non-governmental organizations transcend borders to work on issues affecting people worldwide. These organizations play increasingly important roles in global governance. They address problems that individual governments cannot solve alone. Understanding their role helps you see how global civil society functions, alongside governments and corporations. International organizations like the International Monetary Fund and World Trade Organization shape global economic rules. We'll explore these organizations in more detail in future lessons. For now, understand that they create frameworks within which globalization operates. They attempt to manage international cooperation and resolve disputes between nations. Remember that globalization is not inevitable or unidirectional. Countries can choose how much to participate in global integration. They can implement policies that encourage or discourage international connections. The debate about globalization continues because the outcomes affect billions of people. Your understanding of these debates shows sophistication in your analysis. As we wrap up this comprehensive overview, I want you to feel confident about your grasp of globalization fundamentals. We've covered the definition and drivers of globalization. We've explored the stages companies go through when going global. We've examined the benefits and challenges of global expansion. We've discussed the globalization debate from multiple perspectives. This foundation prepares you for more detailed study of specific aspects of international business. Don't forget to use those 300 free practice questions I mentioned. They're designed specifically to help you apply everything we've discussed today. The questions will help you think critically about globalization scenarios. They'll prepare you for the types of analysis your exam will require. With the depth of knowledge you've gained today, plus practice from those questions, you'll be incredibly well prepared. Globalization will continue to shape our world in ways we cannot fully predict. Understanding its foundations helps you make sense of international news and business developments. It helps you see how local events connect to global trends. This knowledge serves you well beyond your exam. It helps you become an informed citizen in our interconnected world. I encourage you to review this material multiple times. Each time you review, you'll notice new connections between concepts. You'll develop a deeper understanding of how globalization operates. Active engagement with the material through practice questions accelerates your learning. Discussing these ideas with classmates or study partners also reinforces your understanding. Your success on the exam depends on both knowledge and application. Knowing definitions and facts is important, but insufficient. You must be able to analyze scenarios, evaluate arguments, and make recommendations. The practice questions I've created help you develop these higher-level skills. They present realistic situations requiring critical thinking and analysis. Thank you for investing this time in understanding globalization. The effort you put into mastering these foundations will pay dividends throughout your exam and beyond. Globalization affects every aspect of modern life and business. Your comprehensive understanding sets you apart. Now go practice applying these concepts, and I'll see you in the next lesson, where we continue building your international business expertise.